Fortunately for me, since I didn't take additional funding, I wasn't diluted multiple times. I've met so many founders and they go through rounds A, B, C, D, E, F, and next thing you know, they end up with 5%, 10% of the company. And it just doesn't work. I mean, you're going to have a big exit, but it's really not going to be all that meaningful, at the end of the day. And I've never kind of fallen into that trap. Just getting out in front of your skis, I tend to follow the cash flow. And look, guys, we got to make it happen on the revenue that we're generating. We're not going to go out and bet the farm and borrow a bunch of money and create these crazy expectations, right? That we're going to be $100 million in revenue within 5 years, which may or may not happen, which means none of us are going to have any significant exit. Once you start taking outside money, you get someone else starting to make those decisions for you, whether you like them or not.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big funding. I'm your host, Greg Head, and this week my guest is Steve Reynolds, the former CEO and founder of TripBam, a travel technology software company. Steve goes way back in the travel technology industry, started several companies, including TripBam, that grew over a 10-year period and sold in 2023. So to a private equity-backed strategic acquirer that bought TripBam. So we talk about the journey in the travel industry and the journey of creating and selling TripBam and all the adventures that happen. Very practical founder and a savvy founder. Hey, Steve, welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast.
Thanks, Greg. Glad to be here.
Yes. And we're both here in Dallas in this crazy, icy week. We're all probably on lockdown. There's not much going on here when it snows in Dallas. You're getting through it okay, I guess, over there, other part of town?
Yeah, it looks like I'm looking out the window and it appears to be thawing. So
Yes.
We're not frozen in as much as we were a couple of days ago.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you started your company, TripBam here, and you've been around the Texas entrepreneurial ecosystem, building companies for a long time in the travel tech industry. So let's just start with your latest venture, which you started, grew, and sold, and now you're completely out of it, called TripBam. Steve, why don't you explain what is or was TripBam, and who is it for? What did it do? And we'll start there.
Yeah. So at the beginning, it was, I'd done a lot of B2B software and sold a few companies prior. I thought, okay, let's try something a little different and try B2C. So we created a website where an individual could go in and say, all right, I've got a 200 a night hotel room in New York at the Grand Hyatt. I want you to shop that every day for me until I check in. And I want you to also check these other hotels nearby, and they could pick them off a map.
Yeah.
And then we would robotically go in through software. And if we found a lower rate, if they had booked through us, we could automatically change it. Otherwise, we just had to notify them and say, hey, Greg, found you a lower rate, can save you $50 a night. Do you want it, yes or no? And you would have to kind of book that yourself, or you could book it through us, and it was all free or commission-based is the way it worked. But what happened was I'd been in the corporate travel space for a number of years, and then a couple of my buddies called me up and said, hey, Steve, I hear about what you're doing. Would you be willing to apply this to corporate travel? And I'm like, well, no reason why we can't. And so the first one that signed up wrote a pretty significant check and was willing to do a subscription fee on a monthly fee, which sort of covered our cash flow almost from day one.
Yeah.
So we pivoted and went B2B, and then we sort of never looked back, and then sold about 9 years later.
Okay. So, and this was in the corporate travel industry, and it was a software tech company that for corporate travel, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars, the largest companies, right? On hotels and airlines and things like that. Was it just hotels, or did it include airlines that
we
fares
added
changed, you'd give them the
airlines.
discount?
So with COVID, initially the airlines had this change fee. You could change it, but it was cost you $200, which kind
Right.
of took away the benefit of reshopping. So we, when the COVID came along, they got rid of all those change fees, and so we added an air component to take advantage of that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was mostly hotels, mostly for big companies, and the bigger they are, presumably, the more
Yeah, and
you
that
can save
was
them.
we were kind of the only game in town because there wasn't anybody else willing to invest the money to build this thing out because the hotels didn't like it, travel agencies didn't like it. The only one to really benefit was the corporation or the consumer. So we built it. Had no competition for the first several years around the hotel space. We're the first ones to do it. The corporate market woke up to it, and we were signing them up kind of like hotcakes. I mean, we'd have a line at our trade shows and people signing up. We would sign up 2 or 3 large logos pretty much every month for
Wow.
our first several years. Yeah, we got up to where we were servicing about 250 of the largest corporations around the globe.
Wow.
Um, all the high techs, the Google, the IBMs, the Microsofts, and then all of the big consulting firms, EY, PwC, you name it. I mean, it really took off.
And that probably had a material effect in the travel industry, right? The biggest companies and their presumably negotiated discounts with hotels, all those agreements and all the changes they do, that dynamic pricing. You got in the middle of this on the side of the big companies and their big expense budgets to, I don't know, arbitrage the lazy profits of the travel industry, right? That they would change the pricing and nobody would look every day, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe not even enforce their discounts and look at it. But you were monitoring all of that. What's the discount? What's the price today? What did you pay for it? Must have
No,
been
no,
like,
exactly
yeah, is
right.
that what it
I
was?
mean,
Yeah.
we really
Yeah.
started to have a big impact upon the revenue margins of the major chains.
The
The
stock prices
Marriotts,
of these
Hiltons.
hotels, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's at every and the thing is every hotel acts as like its own little company. There's
Ah,
a revenue manager that sits on property that's sort of turning the dials and deciding whether to increase or decrease the rates.
I see.
And some of them would just kind of do crazy things and we take advantage of it.
Ah, right, to try to fill up this weekend or, do something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And when you say robotic, it was software to automate to check the website, what's the price on these dates and that kind of thing, or
Yeah, no, we weren't checking through the website. There's lots of different ways to get at hotel inventory through the whole
I
distribution
see,
models. There's the
I see.
GDSs. There's a company here in town called Disco, which is now owned by RateGain. There are hoteliers publish their rates and the changes they make pretty much on a sometimes more than once a day basis
Wow,
through several different distribution channels, and we would tap multiple of those channels to get access to the rates, and then we would find it, and then depending on where the booking was made, we would automatically go in and rebook it to capture the savings.
okay. And so when you go to a big company that has a big travel budget, how much could you, let's say, guarantee or, estimate that you could save them,
Yeah,
based
so
on
if
what
all
you
they did was shop the same hotel, they didn't want to disrupt the traveler in any way or make them change properties, we could save them probably about 5 to 10% on their
oh my
hotel
gosh,
spend.
yeah.
If they looked at alternative hotels, which we thought were, look, the guy's in a 3.5 star, let's put him in a 4 star across the street and we'll check it every day. When we did that, we could get up to 25 to 30% of savings.
Wow. And what does that amount to for like Dell or, they have people flying around all the time?
Well, our largest customer was Amazon. They were spending close to, I want to say 700 million on their hotel spend alone,
Hotels. Wow.
on just hotels.
Right.
So 5% on 700 million. What's that? 35 million
Yeah.
is a pretty decent amount of money. So it's just and we wouldn't disrupt the traveler in any way. The traveler didn't have to do anything. We would get the
Yeah.
reservations automatically. We'd shop automatically. We'd find the savings, rebook them. All that would happen was they'd get an email that says, "Hey, congratulations, we just saved you $50
Oh, right. Yeah.
on
The
your hotel
reminder.
spend."
Well done. Yes. A little marketing there, a little reward.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So it was let's say a simple story. Kind of were the only one to start here. How big did it grow to? You sold the company in 2023. How big was the company when you sold it, roughly in revenue?
Yeah, I guess from the employee side, well, customers, we got up to we had about 2,000 total customers,
Okay.
corporations that were sending us bookings, some of those through, travel agencies that partnered with us.
Yeah.
Um, large corporations tended to buy the solution directly for a variety of reasons. There were about 250 of those. We had about, at the peak, 50 employees, both in the U.S. and Europe. And I would say we were doing about 8 to 10 million in revenue.
Okay. And so you were doing about 10 million in revenue. Did you charge let's say a success fee, transaction fee, or a subscription base fee, or some mix of those hybrid?
Yeah, kind of all the above.
Okay.
We would charge in some cases a subscription fee, and we would give the largest, kind of the best price per transaction around that. Or you could do what we called a gain share, where
Hmm.
we would take 25% of the savings, you'd keep 75% of it.
Okay.
Or we would do a transaction fee. So we would charge you $1 for every
Okay. Right.
booking that you
Whatever
sent,
worked for them. Right.
whatever worked for the client. We were
And was
really
this the
flexible.
CFO who was looking at this, or was this the travel manager that was managing their budget, trying to get a
A
win?
little of both. It was predominantly we would sell through the travel manager
I
because
see.
they're responsible for the spend and the hotel spend and what have you. And that's usually who would hear about us first
Yeah.
through their just kind of regular channels, trade shows, events, that sort of
Yes.
thing. But then we'd get to the CFO that would have to approve the budget
I see. Right.
because it would become a pretty big line item as far as the spend
Right.
for the
So
service.
I'm imagining 10 million in revenues, and you're probably saving all of those 2,000 customers, including the big ones, let's say hundreds of millions, right, in savings every year. I
Correct.
mean, if you could calculate it. So, you were doing, I don't know, sometimes the math is you give them 10x the value and of what you're going to charge, right? And that you can kind of ascribe in an ROI, which is not always as simple as what you just described. But do you have a sense for what the collective payback was on
Yeah. No,
their
we would
yeah.
price basically in reverse. We would sort of target an ROI of about 8x,
Okay, 8x, right.
800%. And
Yeah,
because we knew that if we could do that, then we would get, I mean, it was just an approval process was really simple, pretty
okay.
easy.
And
In
did
addition,
you, try like, pricing around 5x and it slowed down and, 8x was just good enough and, that kind of
yeah,
thing?
I
Or
mean, in
yeah,
some cases we did.
yeah,
But for the most part, we found it, look, just this is our price, take it or leave it. And, they would take it. In
okay.
addition to that, we would run a free pilot. So
I
the
see.
client could
Oh,
send
wow.
us all their future hotel bookings. We'd run them through the system and say, look, if you'd actually had the service, we would have saved you 4 million bucks.
There's the ROI calculator right there, the
And they
real
would
one,
just
right?
take
Not
that
the fake one.
to the CFO and he'd rubber stamp it and we'd be off and running.
Wow, that's amazing. And, I guess you had to be in the travel industry for a few years to, see where this was and see why the industry is not going to change and nobody's going to follow you there. You sold the company in 2023 to private equity backed Imburse, a big gorilla in the travel management software space, right?
Yep.
Can you say anything about what the acquisition was there? That was a good time to sell a company still,
Yeah. I
generally?
mean, it was more work and it took more time than I anticipated. We decided to run a process. Well, so started down the path of looking to sell. I'm sort of try to get it to 10 million, then it's time to start thinking about the exit.
Okay, very practical. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not looking to grow it to 100 million or any of that kind of stuff. So we hit that point pre-COVID in 2019 or 2020. We hired an investment banker, started the process, and then COVID hit right
Yeah.
in the middle of it. So we had to put the brakes on, and we really didn't get back on the runway for 2 years after that. We wanted to see the revenue recover, make sure that clients were sticky. Unfortunately for us, we pretty much kept every client on the system, even though their hotel bookings dropped by as much as 95%
Right. So
through
you
that
had a little
period.
subscription revenue to tide you over, right, when transactions fell,
Oh
I
yeah,
guess? Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Who was your M&A advisor?
GLC out of Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, and Denver means Adam Haynes, is
Adam
that right?
Hayes.
Yeah.
That's
Yes, he's
right.
been on the podcast, I've known him. He helped take, our Sales Logics public, back 25 years ago before he got onto the practical M&A side, so he's helped a lot of practical founders, several
Yeah.
from
No,
my
he gets
time.
around. So a lot of
Yes.
people know Adam.
Yes, that's great. Awesome. So, and did you spend time with this, you know, the new owners, or were you swallowed up and, and no fun for the crazy founder?
Yeah. So, I mean, even prior to that, though, just the whole purchase process took, probably about 9 months in
Ah.
total, which was probably about 3 or 4 months longer than I anticipated. And it sort of, we were a small company. So myself and the CFO and others just spent way too much time through this
Yes.
acquisition process, and it was starting to impact the company. But anyway, we finally had a successful exit, sold for basically the price that we thought we'd get for it
Oh, great.
to Embers, which is backed by K1 out of LA.
Mhm.
Um, and it was kind of a weird situation. The board at K1 had gotten sideways with the management team pretty much the day after we were acquired.
Your management team or
No, no,
the
no, no.
Embers?
The Embers management
Oh, I
team.
see. Okay, great. Yeah.
So K1 made the decision to basically let everybody go.
Oh my gosh.
So,
So this is a private equity-backed large software company,
yep,
that the private equity, just before this large software company, Embers, acquired you, they got rid of the management team. That old frustration, of the investors and the
exactly
founders.
right.
Oh
So
my
it was
gosh.
kind of like not having anybody to report to for a period of time.
Okay, that helps.
They brought in an interim management team, which had its own issues of people trying to make decisions, knowing they're going to be around only for a very short period of time. And then the new CEO came on board, and Marnie Martin, and she made the decision that she was going to integrate all of the travel assets that they've acquired into Embers and not sort of keep it separate. And then when that decision was made, I no longer really had a role at the company.
Yeah.
I was kind of moved into a chief strategy officer position, which basically meant I was there to help with the integration and answer questions and
Yes.
be on calls every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, that's a classic thing, right? The big company and private equity backed, and they acquire other companies. That's part of the strategy. And sometimes they leave these acquired companies as, let's say, separate entities. The brand, the founder, the team stays separate. They're not integrated into the big matrix organization and so forth. I've been there, both sides of that, and they decided to integrate all that, which basically turns off all the fun for founders. It becomes a product line in a big organization, and yeah, all that stuff. So
Exactly right.
yeah,
Exactly
do you
right.
think that was the right decision for them? I mean, sometimes that makes sense, right? So
Well, I mean, it depends on how you want to look at it. If you look at it based on where TripBam is today, as far as revenue, I think it's kind of just sort of flat. I don't
okay,
know that it's growing all that as much as definitely not growing as much as it was. I mean, it
yeah,
was a rule of 60 company when it was
okay,
acquired.
all
So
right,
significant profit margins and growth, and it's not that today. I was a believer that, look, take all the travel assets, keep them separate, but find the synergies between the expense side, which is what Embers is at its heart,
okay, there we go,
and the
yeah,
travel side,
yeah,
and try to grow both of them, at the same time. But then there was some obviously, but the markets are different, is
for
what
expense and travel or that kind of
exactly.
thing. Yeah,
Expenses are usually more sold to the CFO, into the AP, and that kind of group.
yeah.
Travel is purely over there, and and the technology stacks are significantly different. There's a lot of expertise required for both solutions, and when you blend them together, it sort of dilutes both sides, in my opinion.
This podcast is brought to you by my friends at Designly. If you're a non-technical founder with an up-and-running SaaS business, but your first product and dev partner aren't keeping up, it's time to check out Designly. Designly understands the pains you're experiencing right now. Dev leaders who speak in jargon and put you off, MVPs that went live and face technical problems and UX issues, and missed expectations all around. Designly's mission is to help non-technical software founders build great products with clarity, confidence, and peace of mind by serving as your fully outsourced engineering team. Designly becomes your trusted product partner, working with you every week as your dedicated team. They have partnered with over 200 non-technical and practical founders in the last 12 years. Designly knows how to turn that crazy product stress into calm and successful software launches. Check out their success stories from founders like you who've been there. It all starts with a free 1-week audit where they review your product's code, design, and roadmap to uncover what's working, what's broken, and what's next. Check out designly.co/practical. That's designli.co/practical to talk to them and see how they can help you move faster and sleep better. Yeah, I think that, it's a classic challenge you've been in the travel industry for a long time. It is a huge and deep industry, right? There's a
Oh yeah,
lot
no, it's
going
a
on there.
multi-trillion
Yeah.
dollar industry if
Yes.
you add up all the air, hotel, car, and everything
Yes.
else, and especially if you combine leisure with corporate,
Right.
it's massive. But what most people don't realize is there's just a lot of legacy systems in place that just make it crazy complicated just to do the simplest things.
And
Um,
legacy systems meaning the airlines and the travel players and the plumbing in the middle of all of this and all of that.
exactly
It's
right.
right.
I mean,
Came
as
out
an
of the
example,
80s
the
and 90s
airlines.
mainframes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the airlines are on systems still that were built back in the 80s,
Yeah.
and they haven't evolved all that much. And then those feed into the GDSs, Sabre, which has been
Uh-huh.
around since about the same amount of time. There's
Yeah.
just very antiquated, very hard to connect solutions. Hoteliers are just as bad. They've got property management systems that have been around for decades. And so if you want to connect to a hotel or if you're a distributor, it just makes it so difficult. And so fortunately for me, I'd been in the business for about 30 plus years when I started TripBam.
Okay.
So I kind of had a feel for what the problems were and how to get around them and the solutions. And then
Right.
on top of that, you have the travel management companies that have sort of built a moat around this data and sometimes can make it difficult to get to the bookings in order to do what you need to do, whether that's analytics or reporting or reshopping, like what we
What
were
is a
doing.
travel management company? Is that like an agency, the service provider that helps IBM with all of
Yeah,
their travel? So the
e-
IBM doesn't have to do it? Yeah.
exactly. So American Express, GBT, they call it, is the largest, and then BCD is the second. I don't even know who's third anymore. Direct Travel, or
Yeah.
there's quite a few of them.
Right.
Navan is another big one.
Okay. So, were you in the software side of the travel industry for your career, or did you get into services and end up on the software side, or you
Yeah, no, no.
know?
I
Yeah.
was on the tech software side from the get go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you a tech guy, or were you just an entrepreneurial guy that found their way into this
No,
space?
I'm a tech guy, but over my career, I sort of morphed into more of a biz dev guy, I
Ah,
guess you could say. So
yeah.
yeah, I was computer science out of college, got an
Oh, okay.
MBA, and
Yeah.
then my first assignment was with a travel agency in Houston. Been hired by Ernst and Young at the time
Yes.
now, or
Yeah.
Ernst and Winnie, now Ernst and
Yeah.
Young, to be a systems consultant. So this travel agency hired us up to build out a reporting solution. It sort of really took off. It was like the first analytics and reporting tool for the corporate travel space that did well. And then he convinced us to come on over and start a company
Yeah.
to sell it to the industry. And
Yeah.
that was CTI. So that was my first sort of entrepreneurial, I was a founding member of that company. And then Amex, American Express came along and bought the whole thing, the travel agency and the software company, about 4 years later.
Wow. And then you had another one that brought you to Dallas.
That's right.
Yeah, travel tech.
Yeah, Travel Technologies Group.
Yeah.
So that was another. So some buddies, the guys at Amex, some of them left. They started up a new travel agency called World Travel Partners, which is a roll up of about 15 travel agencies.
Hmm.
They wanted to have it, they call it a technology halo or a story.
Mhm.
And they thought the LifeGo solution was the way to go. So they wanted to start another tech company
Mhm.
associated with the travel agency. So they asked me if I wanted to join. I did. They had some technical assets in Dallas. So we thought, all right, that'd be the ideal place because that's where, there was only like 3 or 4 employees at the time.
Yeah.
So let's start it in Dallas. So I moved to Dallas from Houston and we started up TTG, and it grew. It got to a point. The interesting part about that was we created this, they call it a mid-office solution, where you book a reservation, but there's a lot of stuff that had to happen behind the scenes,
Hmm.
including the ticketing, of the transaction, documentation, and so on, capturing the data for reporting and analytics. So we created this mid-office, and it was one of the first service bureau solutions, SaaS solutions, I guess you
Yeah.
could say,
Yeah, yeah,
before the internet.
yeah.
And it really took off to where we were processing close to 80% of all corporate travel reservations in the US.
Okay. Well, it's an interesting career. You got into travel through Ernst& Young as a consultant, and I guess you were on, like you're working with huge companies and big companies, but you were entrepreneurial, seeing where the problem was, going to the problem, spinning out things with people to attack the problem, selling it back to the big guys, finding another problem, going out with another group. Is that a version of what you did, right? You know, find problems and created companies to go solve them?
Yeah, I think so, and just recognizing when to pivot. I mean, it seems like every time you're like, "All right, this is what we're gonna do," but usually within about a year, you realize, that's a good idea, but this one's better.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
pivot is where you're actually gonna make your money,
Yeah.
and things are gonna take off.
I think it's kind of the classic story. Almost on the podcast here, people say, I sold the company, it got big, I sold it, and then we've always been this. But there's always the story. Well, what was it when you started that you changed, right? I was part of the very early days, 30 years ago, of the first software used by salespeople that was used by millions, Act Software, which was here in
Yeah? Yeah.
here in Dallas back then. That's why I was there then and here now, but it didn't start out as the software for salespeople. It started off as quoting for people who sold PCs,
Oh,
to,
okay. Yeah.
the old PCs in the 80s. And they said, I don't want the quoting, I want the contact stuff, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's where it turned into, but it's a very classic story.
Yeah, and we had
That,
a similar situation at TripBam where, we
yeah,
thought it was the reshopping and the savings that we achieved, but it turned out to be the auditing of hotel
interesting.
contracts
Yeah,
to where making sure they got applied because most companies have about 25 to 30% discounts
yeah,
negotiated. They spend a
yes.
year, 6 months out of the year negotiating them, and then only to find out they're not being applied, right?
Is
And
that
so
because
we
it's
would
a
come in.
system thing or, somebody calls the hotel directly or something like that? Or it's just, the plumbing is so poor that it
It's
doesn't
just
really
the
work?
plumbing is complex, and when
I
it
see.
breaks, people
I
don't
see.
notice it,
I
is the
see. Okay.
problem, right? So we
Alright.
were checking every single booking to make sure if you had a contract that it was applied and you were getting your discount, and we'd let the company know, the Grand Hyatt in New York just lost your discount. You're not getting it any longer, and they could fix it. And
Yeah.
it was sort of the first of its kind, and I think that actually had more value than the actual reshopping that we
Yes.
provided.
Okay. Well, I guess reshop was, the hook why they came, right? And then the auditing is why they stayed probably, right?
Exactly
Some
right. I
some
mean, because
version
the
of that.
reshop generated real ROI.
Yes.
Right, and so they
Yeah,
could take that to CFO, get it all hooked up, and then we would bolt on the auditing service and a bunch of other stuff on top of it.
that's right. That's amazing. Kids these days don't realize what the travel industry was back in the late 80s and 90s, right? When software was taken off. You know, you had to call and talk to a travel agent to book an airline, and then you had to drive over and get the paper ticket, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And can you give some sense of what that was like? Or, now
Well,
we
that's
have
what it
apps
was.
and the internet and everything, and we're all doing it ourselves, but it wasn't always like that.
Yeah, no, we'd have banks and banks of travel agents that were sitting there waiting for the phone to ring,
Yes.
and they'd pick up the call, and they would hop onto this very antiquated today system that hasn't changed a whole lot called Sabre,
Uh-huh.
to book air, hotel, and car.
Yeah.
Prior to that, the agents had to make phone calls into the individual suppliers to actually make the booking. But Sabre automated it in the 70s, and so that's when I got into the business in the 80s, is what was being used. And it was all about call center management. How do we get the most out of all these people? How do
Yeah.
we route the phone calls appropriately? And then once they book the reservation, we spent a lot of time automating to get it all the way through ticketing. And then we spent time getting that paper ticket, to the traveler.
Right.
We had these things called satellite ticket printers spread all over the
Mhm.
city
Yeah.
so that we could
Authorized printers for just those tickets, yeah.
just for the tickets. It's all they would
Yeah,
do.
right.
Um, and then you had these regulatory agencies that were so antiquated. So, for example, you had to have your ticket stock kept in a vault.
Yeah, like
Uh,
money. Yeah, it was currency, really.
yeah, yeah, they
Yeah.
treated it like currency. And so, and they had different rules in Europe than in the US. So if you decided you ever wanted to go global,
Yeah.
you had different, it was chaotic.
Well, Sabre still exists. I live literally walking distance from the headquarters over here in South Lake, so it's just around the corner, from me, and still a big building and still in the plumbing of this travel industry, which is huge. And some people say travel sucks these days because everything's full and all of that. And I'm like, did you travel back in the day when you had to call about everything and drive over and get tickets, and you didn't get up to the minute apps and reschedules and all that kind of thing? It was a little painful back then. I guess that's what it was, and it's always been a huge industry there. So, when did you start TripBam? Do you remember what year that was?
Yeah, I mean, so it was kind of a 10-year journey
Yeah,
with 2 years of COVID in the middle of it. So 2013
yeah,
was about the time we founded that B2C solution.
yeah.
And it was myself and a couple of buddies from a prior company
And a
that decided.
consumer app, usually takes funding to get awareness, to get people on it and do the PR and advertising thing and so forth. Did you raise any funding thinking about consumer side?
Yeah. So there was a venture capital group that specializes in travel, which is called Thayer Ventures
Ah,
out of San Francisco. So a buddy of mine, a guy named Jeff Jackson, who worked at Thayer, called me up. He'd heard about what we were doing and just said, "Hey, are you interested in taking some money?" So I visited with them for a bit. We worked out a deal. And so we did raise about 1.5 million.
yeah, it's very practical back
Yeah.
then, like that. So, and that got you going. And as soon as you got to the B2B side, you realize, I mean, were you profitable since then? Maybe
Yeah.
COVID
So pretty much
notwithstanding?
right
Yeah.
when we took the money is when we sold our first B2B deal.
Ah,
And we became cash flow positive. And so you could say, well, it was a mistake taking that money, but
yeah.
I called it sleep at night money. It
Yes.
really, and it helped me
Yeah.
pay salaries to the staff and really kind of get
Yeah.
to the next level. And our plan was to continue to do B2C and B2B at the same time. And we were going to spend some of that 1.5 on just,
Yes.
marketing and keyword search and whatever else we had to do. But, once we saw the cash flow coming in and the size of checks being written, we pivoted and really never looked back.
If you raised more money, you would have procrastinated focusing probably a little longer, right? You think you
Oh,
could do
yeah.
the
No,
a
absolutely.
little bit longer,
Yeah.
that kind of thing here.
I
What
still
was
think there's a ton
Yeah,
of value and need for a B2C solution around
yeah.
hotel reshopping, and I keep waiting for someone to go and create it, and maybe that'll be my next venture, but
Yeah, that's right. Wow. So, did you have a co-founder and
Yeah,
a team that you knew? You'd
yeah.
done this before? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's an individual in Dallas that I'd worked with at 2 prior companies, Caleb Blanton, who's one of the best programmers
There
around.
you go. Yeah.
He took on the technical, operations side. Another guy named Steve Smith, was his partner. So we were the 3 kind of
3
starting
musketeers, yes.
founders of the company.
And you'd worked together before, at least with Caleb, and, you that's a head start for anybody, right? Is, the industry, the players,
Oh, yeah.
kinda have some focus and the race is on. Was it, was it a crazy race in the beginning? Was it a craziness or was
I
it
mean, 2020 hindsight, yeah, I mean, I would say we were when you sign up a large consulting firm right from the get-go that's gonna send you 50,000 hotel bookings tomorrow,
Yes.
and your system has to process those in a timely
Right.
manner,
There we go.
and we had to scale up rather quickly, and we
I
had to
see.
write a lot of software real quick because what we had was more of what I would call an MVP,
Yep.
at the time. It would work, but it couldn't handle the scale. And so there was a mad scramble over about 90 days to get all
Yeah.
that up and running and working.
Well, in the practical, zone here of the startup land, that's called funding, right? Go sell something and then race back and, fix it, build it, scale it, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's really just not all that money dependent anymore.
That's right, you're
I
right.
mean, so much can be built just in the cloud. And even, I mean, today you've got AI to write probably, 20, 30% of the code for you.
That's right.
We didn't even have that. But
Wow.
it's just a whole different world from when I first started out, to where you had to hire teams of programmers, and a lot of times to scale that up, you had to go offshore. I
Yes.
think those days are kind of gone. You don't need
Yeah,
to do
that's
that
right.
anymore.
Right, and like, you don't need VC funding. VC fundings move on from SaaS because, you can build it really quick. And
Yeah,
with
but
you.
the
Yeah.
exception of if you're trying to go B2C and you really
Yes,
want to market big,
that's right.
that's an expensive big check you got to write just
Right.
to move the needle. It's not about the software.
That's right. The, I'm curious about the sales proposition, right? And sometimes newfangled things, it's very even in established industries where you're well connected. Sometimes it's difficult to explain the new thing, right? I was there at the beginning selling software to salespeople before they had computers, right? So
Yeah.
get a computer, run this thing. It'll be like spreadsheets were for finance people. That was a logical conclusion, was for salespeople. But this sounds like a pretty straightforward proposition. You've got travel, you've got contracts, prices change. Give us your data. We'll show you how much your savings are, and let's get going, right?
Yeah.
Was it pretty straightforward?
Very much, very much.
Okay.
And we'd say, look, send us your hotel bookings that you have, all the future ones. They'd send us a file. We'd import that into the system. We'd run it for a couple of weeks and show them the results.
Yeah.
And then it was just how long could we get to contract?
Okay. Right. Very interesting. And so did you have salespeople that were knocking on doors,
Yeah.
and calling on,
Well,
doing that
yeah,
kind of thing?
most of
Or
our marketing was trade shows, articles in,
okay, so you got the word out and
we get
people
the word
called.
out. And then a lot of
Yeah.
it was just peer-to-peer networking.
Right.
The other thing we did was we would have these buyer sessions within each of the cities.
Eh,
We were really buyers advocates around
yes.
all of this.
Mm,
And so we would say, okay, IBM, can you hold, in your headquarters office, would you be willing to, hold a meeting, a lunch meeting? We'd pay for lunch and invite your buddies to come in and just hear what we're doing. And they would. And we'd get probably about 20 in the room, and we'd walk
from
away with
IBM or from other companies,
from
other
other
travel.
companies
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
that had similar spend. And then we'd walk away with 10 to 15 quality leads and close them.
That's amazing. It's like low-hanging fruit, that's, compared to what it takes to sell a lot of people on new
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah. I mean,
these days.
people
Yeah.
were always like, how the heck did you sell 250 large logos
Yeah.
on your product?
Did you have let's say, a disruptive message for the market, right? You could shout it and get press coverage because it was controversial, right? "You're spending too much on money, you're wasting money. The hotels are out to screw you," right? I don't know. It's easy to get attention when you say those kind of things. Did you get a
And
lot
we
of
were
attention
very
that way?
disruptive. We were
Okay.
disruptive both to the hoteliers as well as the the TMCs, the travel agencies.
So the
The
hoteliers knew about you, probably didn't wanna spread the word, but everybody knew what you were doing, I guess.
Right, right. The
Yes.
hoteliers weren't going to talk. At least they would talk amongst themselves on how to try to turn us off, but they never
Yeah.
quite figured out how to do that. And then the TMCs didn't like us because we were basically reducing their revenue.
Right. Yeah,
But they had the TMCs have a responsibility to provide the best hotel rate and hotel value to their clients.
right,
We were just helping them deliver on that promise. They didn't
right,
quite see it that way.
right. So in a classic thing, if you're doing something disruptive enough, you're displacing somebody, right? You're displacing staff. AI is gonna displace some workers and some other ways of doing it and some software and so forth, but, and sometimes the politics of who you're displacing can stop you. "No, we don't wanna do that," right? But in this case, everybody who was fighting against you, the hotels and the travel management companies, they couldn't stop you, right? They weren't and they didn't change their plumbing, so you couldn't get this, right? It was just, I
Well, they
guess you
tried. They
okay,
tried really hard.
okay, there you go.
The hotels, because every hotel sort of runs independently, really couldn't do much. I mean, it would take the whole industry just work together
Oh,
lockstep to make
right.
something to
So that was your
happen.
bet that they're not gonna get together against
Exactly.
little old us,
Exactly.
right?
And you
Yeah,
got 20,000 corporate hotels in the US. I mean, they're just not going to coordinate that much because they're bitter rivals and all that. The travel management companies um, attempted to and that's really why we pivoted to the larger corporate market, because they can dictate the terms to the small companies that they serve. But when it's a really large global account, they don't mess with those.
Yes.
You don't mess around with Amazon,
Yes.
or IBM or Google or Microsoft or Dell or all the others. They pretty much dictate how you're going to serve them. And so
Yeah.
when we would come in, they would say, you will put in this TripBam service. And the TMC would try to come up with excuses not to do it and delay it. And oh my God, it's going to be expensive. And they're like, no, that's BS. You know,
And
make
you
this
coached them
happen.
on that, of course, right?
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what to
make it
say.
happen, or we're going to change agencies or go out to bid or whatever, and they'd get what they want.
So you had to restart the process twice when you were shopping a company?
Well, so we started it. We got all the way through that round of like 80 companies, all receiving prospectus, and then COVID hit pretty much that week
Yeah.
after we mailed them out.
Right.
We're like, okay, this is going to be a problem. It was funny. I mean, we had a user conference. We had probably 400 or 500 companies come to Dallas. They were all
Wow.
sitting in a room, and then they all started disappearing in the middle of the event.
Oh my
And we're
goodness.
like, I guess
Because
this
COVID was
COVID,
happening. Gotta go. Yeah.
yeah, this COVID is real.
Right.
We kept hoping it wasn't and
Yes.
that it was going to go away, but
Yeah.
it just got bigger and bigger. And literally, our business dropped. We looked at the chart on transactions, and within a 2-week period, we went to almost zero transactions processed.
Right. Everything shut down.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I thought, this could end the company. I mean, no company
Right.
is going to continue to write big checks for no service, but no one knew when it was going to come back. And so they didn't want to turn it off and have to
Right.
renegotiate this and go through the whole PO process
Right.
and contracting again if it was all going to come back within a month or two. And
Right.
we kept thinking it was just a month or two away from coming
Right.
back. So fortunately for us, we were able to kind of, negotiate with our customers and what have you. And then there was some PPP money that came in, which was really helpful.
Right.
We right-sized as far as staffing goes pretty early in
Mhm.
in COVID. And when we came out, we continued to be a Rule of 40 company throughout the whole process, throughout the whole of COVID.
So that buffer of profits and the buffer of you could have charged more, but you didn't, and the buffer of having subscription revenue contracts kind of thing, like give you enough to withstand a storm, right? Nobody was predicting it, but world enough, storms happened, things happened,
Yeah.
in the world. Did you feel like you needed a cushion just to, because stuff
Well,
happens and I need to be able to weather the storms?
yeah. So every company that I started with in corporate travel, we had a significant event.
I see.
So 9/11 happened and nobody traveled for a couple of weeks. I mean, so, I'm a bit paranoid to kind of
Yes.
think, what's the worst case scenario and how we're going to survive it?
Right.
So the same here. I mean, we could have generated more revenue and more profit if we'd done 100% gain share or just, percentage of savings with our clients,
Mhm.
but they wouldn't be as sticky. And so
Right.
if there was a recession, if there was a depression, if there was a war, if there was a pandemic, I was going to have a problem. And maybe I had enough money in the bank to survive through it and then get it back going again once we were on the other side. Maybe
Right.
not,
Yeah.
or if I could just do subscription fees and really be the advocate for the buyer and show them. I mean, we were their trusted, tech
Yeah.
supplier and
Yeah.
auditor. They really didn't want us to go away.
Right. Excellent. Well, yeah, that's kind of, an old school bootstrapper mentality. Isn't like, things are going to happen and you didn't overfund it for that cushion. You maintained a solid business with great value and, loyalty with customers and a good profit margin and so forth. So you got through the storm of COVID. Eventually things picked up, not to the same level right away, but and then you restarted your process with Adam and GLC and shopping the company and got through that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and it took longer than we anticipated. I mean, I was hoping to get it all done in 6 months. It took about 9 to make it all happen. And it really, my CFO is one that kind of was the most involved throughout.
I
And,
bet.
we pretty much, had to just almost, okay, you go do that, and we're going to backfill you
Yeah.
with some junior folks,
Yeah.
until this thing's done.
What was the
Um,
biggest thing that the investors were concerned about that, let's say, surprised you? Or because you know about revenue and growth and profits and contracts and agreements and all the normal stuff, but were you surprised about something in the process that they were more concerned about that you
well, I mean,
weren't?
COVID actually helped us in that they could see that we could survive anything. If you can
Ah,
survive COVID, you can survive anything that's going to come your way.
yes.
So that was helpful. So there was a bit concern that something was going to happen and put us out of business. Other than that, I mean, the addressable market, how big could this get? I mean, we were starting to get pretty big, but
Yeah.
they felt like all of them felt like we could increase our revenues if we wanted to
Yeah.
pretty easily. So
Yeah.
no, there really wasn't any huge
Okay.
concerns throughout. It was
Good.
more, I think, we were pretty nichey,
Yes.
and did they understand what we did and the value we provided to the industry?
Your
Um,
magic trick, like, specifically, was just pretty special. Yeah.
Exactly,
Right.
and how could what's gonna keep competition at bay? Well, I've already signed up the largest 250 companies on the planet. I think that's a pretty good moat, to
Right.
future competition and so on, and it can't be
Yeah.
provided by a travel agency because they're not auditors. They can't be unbiased.
Right.
So, it's gonna come from a tech company that needs a ton of expertise. So,
Yeah.
we were in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Did you feel good about getting combined with Emburse on the expense side? I mean, the old joke in the software industry is what do you get when you cross this with that, the acquirer and the acquiree? What do you get when you cross TripBam and Emburse? You
Yeah,
get
I mean,
Emburse.
I could see the strategy behind it. I thought there was a ton of potential. The problem happened was, when that management team changed so early on after the acquisition, all of that strategy sort of went away. And
Yes.
so the new folks came on board. They're like, okay, we've got all these assets. We don't know why they were acquired. We don't know corporate travel. And we just kind of had to start over, sort of educating them. The K1 guys, the private equity firm, they understood it. I think they
Yeah.
got it, but I don't know that the management team did, especially with,
Yeah.
early days. So, they're doing the best they can to integrate it all and make it make sense.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I would have kept it, independent and combined it with the other travel assets.
Right. So you did your time there to help them out in the transition. And, you were a major equity owner of the company, the founder and CEO, and you didn't take a lot of funding there. And in normal private equity kind of deal, even with a strategic like Emburse, do you have to roll some of your equity into the new entity and be part of that and all that?
Yeah. Yeah. So Embers, and to get the deal structured, the valuation that we wanted, they asked us to roll over some equity into the
Yes.
combined NewCo,
Yes.
they called it.
Right.
So we all agreed to that. So there was some rollover equity, into
Yeah.
Embers.
And have you had your second bite of the apple? Have you been able to sell that, some of your rollover equity?
I was able to sell some of it, but there's still, quite a bit
Okay,
left.
okay.
And waiting on the big Embers exit, which who knows when that's going to happen.
Yeah,
Hopefully someday.
that's one of those things. When private equity slows down, all the founders with their rollover equity in there are still waiting, right,
That's right.
for
That's
the
right.
second bite of the apple and or the third bite or whatever that is there. So,
Yeah. But
um,
Greg, I mean, the one
yeah.
thing I do want to mention, fortunately for me, since I didn't take additional funding, I wasn't
Yes,
diluted
yes,
multiple times. I've
yeah,
met so many founders now. I work with startups and whatever now, and they go through rounds A, B, C, D, E, F, and next thing you know, they end up with 5%, 10% of the company, and it just doesn't work. I mean, you're going
right,
to have a big exit, but it's really not going to be all that meaningful.
right,
At the end of the day. And I've never kind of fallen into that trap,
right.
of
It's a
just
trap, and,
having,
yeah,
just getting out in front of your skis. I tend to follow the cash flow. And look, guys, we got to make it happen on the revenue that we're generating. We're not going to go out and bet the farm and borrow a bunch of money and create these crazy expectations, right? That we're going to
yeah,
be 100 million in revenue within 5 years,
yeah,
which may or may not happen, which means none of us are going to have any significant exit,
yeah.
right?
Well said. That's the practical founder motto there. Founder just described, he says, founders can get big exits on, smaller companies if you don't raise Series A, B, C, D and get diluted along the way. And dilution is part of this is the argument of VCs, who, pushing their funding, and this is kind of the Silicon Valley way. I've been there, right? You need the funding to create a bigger pie. So a smaller piece of a bigger pie is what you're doing. But it's not just the dilution, it's actually the risk. The risk that these things, are pumped up and may or may not make it. So there's kind of an all or nothing risk that you don't have to deal with when you've got a cash cushion and you don't have too many people on your cap table. So
Yeah, and it also changes, your sort of horizons on strategy and stuff. You become a lot more shorter term. For me, we were generating so much cash, I could, keep the prices low to keep out competition. I could keep growing as fast as I wanted to. I could grow into Europe when I thought the time was right. Once you start taking outside money, you get someone else starting to make those decisions for you, whether you like them or not.
yeah,
And they tend to look, if we've got an opportunity to generate a lot more cash quickly, let's do that. I don't
yeah,
care about the long-term strategy here because I'm not in this business long-term. I've got a 3 to
mhm,
5 year horizon.
yeah,
So I just, that's where I think things start to kind of potentially go south.
yeah. Okay, so what are you doing now? You're a little bit older. Are you on to a new venture? Are you retired and helping folks? What's going on in your world, Steve?
Yeah, I'm retired.
Yeah,
So sort of just trying to figure out what the transition looks like. I left Embers fully July of last year,
yeah.
and so I've had now about 6 months to kind of think about it. So I'm working with some startups as an advisor. I've done some angel investing here and there with companies that I think, that are disruptive and have a chance of doing
In
something
travel
significant.
or in general?
All in travel right
Okay.
now.
Mm,
Yeah, I guess I don't trust my expertise outside of
there
travel
you
at this
go.
point, to
Yeah,
make any investments. I do some public speaking for different folks,
yeah.
just talking about the industry and more around technology and what's coming and the impact of AI on corporate travel. Just kind of fun stuff like that. Um,
Has it been a hard transition? Usually founders who've been doing this for years and years and years and climbing the mountains, right? When the transaction happens and then it gets quiet, it's a little unsettling for builders and crazy people like us. Has it been unsettling or you playing a little golf and fishing
yeah,
and
no,
enjoying
I
time with
think
family or
well, you got to understand. So when COVID hit, I felt like I was kind of semi-retired then because
ah,
things got really quiet for about 2 years. There,
yeah.
there were no trade shows, events. There was a lot of, web calls and stuff like this, but
Yes, uh-huh.
really not a lot. There's not a lot of transactions to process. We didn't have any scale issues, all that kind of stuff. And then we got acquired. That was a busy time. But then shortly after being acquired, I kind of moved into the chief strategy role. So I had really no direct reports, no
Yeah,
accountability, just kind of be there to answer questions and stuff. So that felt like semi-retirement.
yeah, a
Um,
transition time kind of thing, yeah.
yeah. So I had 2 years for that. And then I've had 6 months for full retirement. So I don't know. It's so far, it's felt
Yeah, good for you.
pretty easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Has your life changed? You won a prize, when you sold the company here. Did your life change as a result of that, in any way? A bigger boat or whatever you might say?
Well, yeah, I actually bought a boat,
Oh,
another boat. So I have a couple of boats now.
okay.
I got upgraded the car, stuff like that. But for the most part, we haven't really changed much at all.
Yeah.
I had 2 weddings that I had to pay for. So that was fortuitous to having sold the company just prior to that. So weddings are expensive in Dallas, Texas. So
Yeah.
I had 2 in the same year. But no, other than that, my wife and I, we've talked about, okay, now what? Is there anything significant that we really want to do or, buy a vacation home somewhere, whatever. But we haven't done any of that at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of the story we tell ourselves as we're so busy, right? Traveling and going crazy and building companies and risking a lot, working a lot of hours that someday, I'll have the freedom to relax and, you know, not everybody can relax, right? This is a version of what I'm doing,
Yeah.
without hanging up the spurs kind of thing. So
And
a
I
lot of
don't, I mean,
interesting.
I wouldn't call it relaxing. I
Yeah.
think it's just something to stay engaged and keep your your brain functioning,
Yeah.
right? And to get a little passionate about.
Yeah.
Um, I'm still looking for that. I'm sure
Mm.
there's some charitable organizations that I can provide some value to, or other startups that I can help advise and
Yeah.
board member stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'll have a variety of things that will fill that void.
And the travel industry keeps changing, right? So I guess the latest thing is probably AI in the travel industry, which isn't, I don't know where it's going to happen here. How do you see AI impacting the travel technology industry?
Yeah, I really haven't seen it impact much yet, other
Right.
than converting voice to text and text to speech kind of stuff.
Okay.
So there's some new, I guess you can say, ways to book travel.
Right.
I can talk to a chat bot and it can do some things for me and what have you. But you got to understand, there's a bunch of legacy systems on the back end
Yes.
that you have to connect to. So you can have just the most AI friendly front end all day long, but you kind of hit a wall pretty quickly on the agentic side.
Yeah.
But, I think over time, just like anything, I don't think it's going to be as pervasive as when the internet and the web came out, where
Eh,
everything went online. And it took a little bit longer than people thought, but now 95% of corporate travel is done through a
yeah.
website, you know.
Right.
And I think, I just find going through either a text prompt or and just talking to the robotics, it's more difficult than just me sitting on a web page filling in the blank,
Yeah, that's right. We're
right?
our own travel agents these days because we can click through and
Yeah,
get
I
it
just
done.
don't see the
Yeah.
benefit of having to say everything and then it regurgitating a response that I'm trying to sort and filter and try to get through. I'm like, just give it to me back. I'm just more comfortable the old way, and I guess I'm probably showing my age to some extent.
Yeah, yeah, it's okay. Well, here we
Yeah.
go. So, yeah, I don't know. In my own travel, I'm not sure where AI is showing up yet, but I'm sure it will in some ways here. So
I
you're,
think it's
yeah,
the
go
the
ahead.
customer support side, the service side of what it does.
Yeah.
So when you need to make a refund or an exchange or void a ticket or change a flight, whatever, you're gonna be talking to robotics and not necessarily a person to do all that if it's something that you can't do
We won't
yourself.
have wait times when
That
flights are crazy. Right. Yeah.
exactly. I think that's where the biggest impact is gonna be, is when there's a flight disruption, they call it. You're not gonna be sitting on hold for an hour waiting for someone just to answer the phone.
Interesting. Okay, great. Well, you talk to a lot of founders, and you are active here in the Dallas ecosystem, helping founders. What is the most typical advice you have for, let's say, a practical software founder who says, in other industries, I want to start this company, I got it going, I see a problem. What's a typical advice that you would have for them when you're talking
Yeah.
to these entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so much of that depends on the context of the problem,
That's right.
So they kind of fall into different buckets. I mean, one is, do we pivot? And usually my answer there is yes, but I would still keep a foot, and keep something kind of as an escape hatch in case it doesn't work out that you can fall back on. The other one they always ask about is raising money. Should I raise money? Do I need to raise money? Where can I go get money? That sort of thing. My advice there is typically the money will find you. If you've got a good idea and you make yourself somewhat known, they will be calling you.
Eh,
And that's what you want to have happen, because you'll get some much better terms
yes,
and a lot less dilution. And then second is, do you really need to raise? I mean,
right,
think about that for a minute. Is there another way to kind of solve this problem without writing a check? Because
right.
writing the check's the easy answer
Yeah,
for most folks. And I just always tried to avoid that any way I could. The other one is just that they need to grow faster for whatever reason. And it gets into, well, depending on where the problem is, it could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be
that's right.
product.
Could be a lot
It
of
just
things.
kind of depends. And that's a hard question to answer because the advice changes with each phone call.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's of course everybody's different context here, and the simple advice that comes from the tech media, and I call it the funding industrial complex, is to do something big, you need to raise VC funding, which is of course brought to you by the funders, who say that, but it's actually the minority of companies get funding and do the ABCD rounds, and
Yeah.
it's a minority that actually make that work for them. So,
And
really,
my VC experience was great. I mean, I
Yeah.
found a company that had expertise within my particular niche. They knew
Yeah.
corporate travel. That's all they did
Right.
with travel technology. And so, Thayer Ventures just
Yeah.
was great. I mean, from a VC, they didn't really overmanage. They didn't dictate what we did, but
Yeah.
also we were doing extremely well. I
Yeah.
mean, when you're growing fast and making a lot of money, they're going to kind of not get in your
And you
way.
raised 1.5 million, which, like, I haven't heard that, 1.5 million of investment in VC in the same thing, unless maybe it's like a seed funding or something like that. So very practical approach there. And I guess they won, on their terms, right? They got a good payback on their
Oh yeah,
investment.
oh
That's
yeah.
great.
No, I think they're very pleased with the end result
Yes. Yeah.
that
Very
they
good.
achieved. And we all wished it was sooner, but COVID took about 2.5 years delay.
Right.
It all would have been within the time horizon that we anticipated.
Uh,
But other than that, the fact that we survived through COVID and they got a really nice return on their money, was pretty unique.
awesome. Well, Steve, I really appreciate you sharing your story and your journey in the travel tech industry and TripBam and all that. So thanks for being on the Practical Founders podcast today. I really appreciate it.
No, Greg, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the discussion. I think, the what you're doing is different than most podcasts kind of in this space. I've done quite a few of these, and
Yeah.
I think really getting just, I don't know, better, not, what's the right word? Sort of less financial advice
Ah,
to founders.
yeah.
It's more about the kind of the other stuff
Yeah. The
to
nitty
get where you
gritty.
want to go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's good stuff. Really
yeah.
appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
No, and good questions.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Thanks for watching this week's interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe to the Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly in-depth interviews with serious software founders who are building valuable software companies without big funding. You can check out my blog, all the podcast episodes, and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com, or message me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. See you next week.